The diner was quiet until it suddenly became loud. One moment, the sounds of clinking plates, overlapping conversations, and the griddle's hum filled the atmosphere. The next moment, John's voice sliced through the noise like a knife. "You know she can't pay, and you serve her anyway." His words reverberated across the room, causing every head to turn. He pointed his finger at me, then directed it like a spotlight toward the corner booth where a girl in an overly bright yellow jacket sat completely still. 30 patrons froze in their positions. A construction worker's fork hovered mid-air, halfway to his mouth. An elderly couple's coffee sat untouched between them, cooling off. Even Martin, the cook, leaned through the service window, spatula in hand. The girl seemed to shrink into herself, her gaze fixed on the sandwich I had just placed down. She appeared so small, her shoulders drawn tight, with waves of shame radiating from her that made my chest ache. John wanted them to perceive a weak waitress violating rules for a lost cause. And perhaps, for a fleeting moment, that was all they saw. However, what none of them realized, what John never bothered to see, was the meticulous little stack of coins she counted each morning, or the way her eyes constantly darted to the door, anticipating a shadow she wished would never come. My name is Nora. I am 27 years old and a waitress balancing night school. This is the narrative of how I transformed a public humiliation into the most unforeseen second chance of my life. For 3 years, I had been arriving at Waverly Diner at 5 a.m. to prepare for the morning rush. Construction crews, teachers, retirees on fixed incomes. The pay was barely sufficient for my studio apartment and student loans, yet the morning regulars made it worthwhile. They remembered my birthday, shared stories from class, split plates to save money, but always tipped generously. 2 weeks prior, I had noticed her for the first time, a girl no older than 10, slipping through the door at exactly 7 a.m. Her yellow jacket hung loosely on her small frame, and she clutched her backpack protectively against her chest. Without establishing eye contact, she would slip into the most distant booth and wait, barely visible above the table. "Egg sandwich, please," she would murmur, her voice so soft that I had to lean in to catch it. When it was time to settle the bill, she would sift through crumpled bills and coins, consistently falling short by nearly $2. I would cover the difference from my tips and include a glass of milk. "Growing bones require calcium," I would say with a wink. She never replied, but she consumed every bite, her eyes perpetually scanning the door. This routine persisted for 2 weeks, 7 a.m., yellow jacket, quiet order, my discreet assistance. She never spoke beyond her order, never smiled, and never made eye contact until today, when John decided to make an example of me. "I asked you a question, Nora," John asserted, his voice slicing through my stunned silence. Behind him, Danny grinned, already retrieving her phone. I realized my embarrassment would be shared in the staff chat within moments. "She's merely a child," I managed to say, my voice more composed than I felt. "I cannot allow her to go to school hungry." "Not your concern," John retorted loudly enough for the entire diner to hear. "No more complimentary items, or it will come out of your paycheck." The little girl left her sandwich untouched, hurriedly gathering her backpack. Before I could reach her, she dashed out the door, a flash of yellow vanishing down the street. In my office now. His cramped back office reeked of cigarettes and cheap cologne. A warning notice lay on his disorganized desk. "Sign here," he instructed without glancing up from his invoices. "Consider this your first and final warning regarding unauthorized discounts." "John, she's just a child, it's not our issue." He interrupted me. "Parents should feed their own children." "Sign it." I took the pen, my hands shaking slightly. I could have explained how the girl counted pennies, how her clothes appeared more tattered each day, how she always came alone. Instead, I simply signed. "Don't make me regret keeping you on," John added as I turned to exit. "Many people would gladly take your position tomorrow." That night, I remained awake in my studio apartment, reflecting on the events of the day. I could not afford to lose this job. Rent was approaching its due date. Student loans were persistent, and finding waitressing jobs that fit around night classes was challenging. However, the idea of turning the girl away made me feel physically ill. Morning came with a resolution. I decided to cover the girl's breakfast myself entirely, ensuring that the transaction remained completely separate from the diner's accounts. John would have no grounds to object to my serving a legitimate paying customer. Yet, 7 a.m. passed without any sign of the girl in the yellow jacket. By 7:30, I found myself checking the door every few minutes, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. Had John's public humiliation frightened her off? Was she unwell? Or worse, had something unfortunate occurred? At 8:15, the atmosphere in the diner changed dramatically. Conversations halted mid-sentence as a sleek black SUV with tinted windows parked directly in front of the entrance. Two men in suits exited first, surveying the area before opening the rear door. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit emerged, his presence effortlessly commanding attention. Two additional suited men flanked him as he entered. The breakfast crowd fell silent. Forks halted mid-bite. John appeared from the back office, his eyes widening. He rushed forward, smoothing his wrinkled shirt. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Waverly Diner. How may we assist you?" His tone had shifted to a servile quality I had never heard before. The man's sharp, discerning eyes scanned the diner, completely disregarding John. "I am searching for the individual who has been assisting my daughter," he declared, his deep voice steady yet revealing nothing of his motives. I stood frozen by the coffee station, pitcher in hand. The four bodyguards positioned themselves strategically throughout the diner, their demeanor professional yet unmistakably alert. John's smile faltered. "I am not certain I comprehend," he stammered. "My daughter," the man reiterated calmly. 10 years old, yellow jacket, she has been visiting this place for breakfast. I placed the coffee pitcher down and moved closer, my heart pounding against my chest. "That's me," I said softly. "I have been serving her." The man turned to me, examining my face for an extended moment, his expression transitioning from scrutiny to something gentler, more exposed. "She has not had breakfast outside our home since her mother passed away," he remarked. "You are the first individual she has spoken a complete sentence to in 3 years." The diner was completely silent. Even the sounds from the kitchen had stopped. "I was unaware," I murmured. The man stepped closer, offering his hand. "Ethan Fraser." A wave of gasps swept through the diner. Even I recognized the name. Ethan Fraser, a tech investor and philanthropist whose image occasionally appeared in business magazines. "My daughter is Emily," he continued. "Following her mother's accident, she developed selective mutism, and despite therapists, specialists, and medications, nothing proved effective. Then yesterday, she handed her tutor a note regarding a kind waitress." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I instantly recognized it as the note I had discovered under the milk glass the previous day, written in large, uneven handwriting. "You're the only one who speaks to me without fear. I enjoy the milk every morning. Thank you, E. This marks the first time she has reached out to anyone," Ethan said, his composure wavering slightly. "I needed to discover who you were." John stepped forward, his demeanor entirely changed. "Mr. Fraser, I can assure you that our establishment always welcomes your daughter. In fact, I personally instructed Miss Sullivan to take special care of her." Ethan's expression hardened as he turned to John. "Really? Because my security team reviewed your establishment before I arrived. They overheard a very different account from your staff." John paled visibly. Behind him, Danny had ceased filming and was slowly retreating toward the kitchen. "Where is Emily today?" I inquired, my concern overshadowing my admiration. "At home with a cold," Ethan replied. She felt disheartened about not having her breakfast here. He turned back to John, his tone steady yet assertive. "I do not require your apologies. What I require are individuals like her." He gestured toward me within my organization. From his pocket, he produced a business card and handed it to me. "Miss Sullivan, should you be interested in starting your own restaurant, I would like to provide full financing for it." I gazed at the card, my vision becoming blurred with tears. I do not comprehend. You showed compassion to my daughter when she was overlooked by everyone else, Ethan stated plainly. I wish to reciprocate that kindness. The entrance of the diner chimed. A small figure clad in a yellow jacket entered, followed by an older woman, presumably her caretaker. Emily, no longer in the shadows, no longer merely the girl, approached me slowly. For the first time, she met my gaze directly. Will you still have egg sandwiches? She inquired in a soft yet clear voice. I knelt to align with her gaze, tears streaming freely now. Every single day if you desire them. Emily beamed. A tiny, delicate being, yet undeniably real. 1 month later, E&V Mornings opened its doors 6 blocks from Waverly Diner. The inviting cafe, named after Emily and Nora, boasted warm lighting, comfortable seating, and a special area designated for school children. A small sign on the wall proclaimed, "No child turned away. All students welcome." I had insisted on maintaining affordable prices. The restaurant's business model included a suspended meal program where patrons could prepay for meals that would be given to those unable to afford them. Emily arrived every morning before school, her yellow jacket now complemented by a small apron embroidered with the cafe's logo. She did not speak much, but she assisted in arranging napkins and wrote the daily specials in her improving handwriting. Occasionally, Ethan joined them, quietly working on his laptop while Emily collaborated with me. At other times, he arranged for a car to pick Emily up afterward, always leaving a generous tip and a note of gratitude. John had sent me an extensive email expressing his apologies and offering me my previous job back with a significant raise. I chose not to reply. Several former regulars from Waverly Diner had started visiting E&V in the mornings instead. Martin, the senior line cook, had joined my team, bringing along his secret hash brown recipe. When local news outlets learned of the story, reporters sought interviews. I turned down most requests but consented to one brief statement. I hadn't done anything remarkable. I simply refused to overlook a child who needed attention. The reporter inquired further about Ethan Fraser's role and the financial arrangements related to the cafe. I smiled. This is not about money. It is about fostering an environment where kindness is the norm, not the exception. On quiet afternoons, I occasionally noticed Emily observing me with a contemplative look. She was gradually coming out of her shell, not in dramatic ways, but through small, meaningful moments. She now acknowledged regular customers with nods, occasionally shared whispered remarks with me about the pastry display, and had begun to maintain her own journal. One morning, Emily came in with a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a framed photograph of herself, smiling shyly, holding an egg sandwich beneath it in her unique handwriting. Thank you for the milk when I was thirsty and the kindness when I was hungry. I hung it behind the counter, a subtle reminder that sometimes the most significant acts of kindness are those that go unnoticed by others. Last week, I noticed John through the cafe window, standing across the street, observing our bustling morning service. Our eyes met for a brief moment before he looked away. I felt no pleasure in his discomfort, only appreciation that his public humiliation had resulted in this unforeseen second opportunity. Emily tugged at my apron, then pointed to a new customer who had just entered. A young boy, perhaps 12, with worn shoes and cautious eyes. Without saying a word, she took an egg sandwich and a glass of milk from the counter and personally delivered them to his table. As I observed her small gesture of kindness, I came to a profound realization. When we face public shame for our compassion, we are presented with 2 options: to retreat into self-protection or to commit further to kindness. Emily had shown me the importance of choosing the latter path, and in doing so, she helped me discover not only a new career but also a sense of purpose. The boy gazed up at Emily in surprise as she placed his breakfast in front of him. She remained silent, merely offering him a slight nod of understanding before returning to my side. At times, the most subdued voices impart the most significant lessons regarding courage, resilience, and the unforeseen ways in which justice ultimately returns to us all.